Resident Evil 7 is one of my favorite Resident Evil games. I flip back and forth between this one and 4, but those two are the best games of the series, with Resident Evil 7 being one of the best horror games of this generation. I want to give some info on my history with the series. I have played Resident Evil Remastered on the Xbox One, Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 along with Revelations 2, but I've only beaten Resident Evil 4, 7, and Revelations 2. I want to mention this so that anyone watching this can know that while I'm not the biggest Resident Evil fan, I have some experience with the series. I will be spoiling the whole game. This is not a review, it's a critique. If you want to play this game, it may be best to play it blind without any outside info. If you want a quick summary of my opinion, it's that this game has an amazing atmosphere, good characters, and combat mechanics, but the end is where the game deflates, and the last few hours are the weakest of the game, along with the lackluster stealth makes for a game that is so close to being great, but just barely missing it. The DLC are all short or just weird, almost mini-game like things that I don't think are even worth mentioning all that much. Resident Evil 7 is a first-person survival horror game, and if Resident Evil 4 was where the series said we are about action, this game is where the series says it's about horror. You play as Ethan Winters, a man searching for his wife Mia. Mia has been missing for 3 years, and like a complete fucking idiot, Ethan heads off to go find her and ends up encountering the Baker family, a strange bunch with unique powers and his inhuman presence that makes them immediately intriguing. And speaking of intriguing, I want to speak about the visuals. This game looks great. I love how the house and the characters all seem to look just human enough that makes their more strange visual qualities even more noticeable. The house is laid out in a reasonable manner, but has some very twisted designs to it that make it stand out even more. Like how they got these strange locks to work these unique contraptions that open up passageways after making the shadow match up with the image on the painting. What the fuck? The best way I can describe it is if they saw the uncanny valley and made sure everything was right at the bottom. The people look human but off somehow. The food just looks disgusting, as is every dining area, and it's maybe the only time in my life that I can call something disturbingly moist. The HUD is fantastic, with no objective markers, and the ammo shown at the bottom goes away, and your health is shown on your wrists. There's so little that gets in your way in terms of HUD, and I enjoy this as it makes for a more immersive experience for me and allows me to view this area as a real area, not the artificial environment that it is. Back to gameplay. Since this game is in first person, you don't have to worry about the camera, because you are the camera. You do move quite slow though, probably because this is survival horror and moving like the Doom guy would be fucking stupid. The first person viewpoint also has the added benefit that people can get really fucking close to your face and make you feel uncomfortable. Hooray! And being a survival horror title, there is a lot of inventory management, scarce resources, and non-regenerating health that the player must worry about. Enemies do not drop ammo, so every shot you take must be replenished by scavenging the area and hopefully finding ammo or at least things to craft. Enemies are all melee based, and you can block their attacks with well-timed blocks that allow for almost no health to be lost. Aiming is very precision based, with the pistol bullets going to the dot that is shown, which forces the player to be more accurate and really consider every shot taken. Your health is shown by this codex on your wrist, but they also have the screen turn red. I think the codex is enough of an indicator, honestly. Pistols, shotguns, flamethrowers, grenade launchers, and even the fucking submachine gun are your weapons of choice, but ammo is always limited until the end, that is. Which makes the player think about combat encounters and items to carry. It's not worth it to even use or carry a grenade launcher if you only have 2 grenades. Damage has a lasting effect because the player must craft health kits to repair from damage. The gameplay will always have you be in one of 3 phases. Stealth, where you must avoid one of the Baker family as they patrol the hallways. Combat, fighting the Molten enemies or the Bakers themselves, this phase has the most to it. And exploration, where the game doesn't have any enemies to worry about and is more about solving puzzles and scavenging for equipment. Resource management is what connects all these phases together. During combat, the player will want to be very accurate so they don't waste bullets, and be defensive so they don't waste health kits. During stealth, the Bakers are invincible, so while it's possible to stun them, the better option is to hide and run away, because fighting them will always lose more resources than you can possibly gain. While exploring, you'll want to find as much ammo or craftable items as possible to help you out in the future. Stealth is the weakest of these phases, while combat is the strongest, but the combat isn't so strong they can carry the game on its own. There are safe zones where enemies can't get to you, and nearly every one of them has an item box to store items, and all the item boxes are tied together so your items transfer from one to another. There are auto saves in addition to these save stations, and saving doesn't cost any items except on Madhouse difficulty, which has cassette tapes which are limited in number. You can craft ammo and health kits and end up using more herbs than Snoop Dogg, and they tell you all the crafting combinations. I'll speak more in depth later about each of these phases. The Baker house is where you'll be trapped for the duration of the game, and this is a small but very interesting house with many routes and paths back to earlier locations. and many weird locked doors with different animals on them that are very visually interesting but very video gamey. Don't think that's a real word, but you know what I mean. That stand out so much that once I got the key I knew where to use it because it just stood out so much in my memory. Many of the doors have weird opening mechanisms that make you think how could they possibly build this. My guess would be Lucas designed it all. The bakers are the stars of the show, being by far the most interesting thing about the story. The overall story is quite simple. A man wants his wife back because he hasn't gotten laid in 3 years and ends up being captured by a strange family and now must fight for his life. But it's the bakers that push the story into being something more. There are 4: Jack, Marguerite, Lucas, and Zoe. Well, 5 if you count the grandma. It's the grandma's fault. Everything is the grandma's fault. The bakers are all unique with what they do. Jack stocks you with farming equipment. Marguerite has insects following her around. Her area is full of these mutated insects. Lucas uses traps and is the only one that doesn't directly fight you but uses his smart style with you. Me and Zoe are interesting characters but not to the same degree. The only boring character is Ethan really, which is a shame. Mia is clearly going insane and seems to have a split personality where one is worried and anxious and the other is, well, violent. Zoe is this mysterious helper that guides you throughout the game and is part of the Baker family and is the only one that isn't completely fucking insane. I enjoy the voice acting a lot too, and whoever voiced Jack did a great job. He has so many memorable moments and lines, and there's a great scene with him later in the game that I won't spoil just yet.
Oh boy! Now look what you've done, motherfucker!
Even though I don't find this or any game or movie for that matter to be scary, what really matters to me is how interesting it is. And this game nails that. You can see glimpses of the Baker family and even me at points in the game just walking around, and this made me interested in what was going on. There are problems with this game though. One is that the game is very much on rails. Even though the game is a small hub world, there are many series of events that are predetermined and happen one after the other. An example is at the beginning in the guest house. You always have to walk down the hall and back to trigger the cutscene with Mia. Also, that remind me, many of these cutscenes are unskippable, even though many are short. Having to see the same fucking thing over and over again with no input is fucking horrible game design and shouldn't be allowed at all anymore. You didn't fight her with an axe, he chops her arm off, and struggling here doesn't make a difference. I literally go on my phone when the scene plays and he will always pull a screwdriver out of his hand at the last second and get his hand chopped off. I want to know, is it more ridiculous that you can pick up your hand and put it in your inventory, or that you can just fucking leave it on the floor? I think the latter is more ridiculous, honestly. You then fight her again, and Jack will punch you so hard that all time and space is warped, so you end up next to Mia. And this is only triggered if your back is not next to a wall. The game has what I'm going to call safety triggers, where after something happens you won't be in any danger for a period of time until you trigger the next scene. After the fight with Jack in the garage, you can explore the entire main hall and dining room area without worrying about any enemies attacking you, and this is where the game is in the exploration phase and honestly isn't that bad. Because it allows for the game to have some downtime after big moments and be paced well, but it's weird looking back and seeing you aren't in danger all that much, and when you are, it's either in a closed off arena against a boss or against a Molten, which I think are just filler enemies. That fight with Jack also has unskippable cutscenes and a moment that was spoiled for me by every fucking thumbnail on YouTube when the game first came out. Thanks for that. And it's another instance of the game being on rails. You must answer the phone for Mia, go to the end of the hall, and return to trigger the next scene. I won't go through every instance because that would be excessive, I'll admit, but while playing the game it's a bit annoying how limited you really are, and if you die and must see a cutscene again multiple times it gets tedious. And I want to say that I like how this game had moments of being safe. Because downtime is important for pacing, having these slower moments give the higher excitement moments more impact since we know what calm feels like. If a game is always in high action, then it becomes boring or annoying. Being at 100 all the time becomes the same thing as being at 0 all the time, and you must pace yourself between them to make an engaging experience, and I think this game does that well. And that's why I enjoy those moments. The limited inventory is a series staple, but it has an easy counter. With enough backtracking you can pick up every item you come across. How it works is you have a limited amount of inventory space that will increase at fixed points in the story. Your guns and ammo all take up slots. Smaller items like combinable items, first aid, pistols, and ammo take up 1 space, and the larger weapons take up 2 slots. Ammo and consumables all have a stacking limit before they separate into 2 slots. And story items will take up 1 inventory slot. So there are a lot of items that take up space and you have a limited amount of space, except for the fact that since this house isn't that big, and every save station has an item box. The only thing stopping you from unlimited space is some enemies which can either be killed or avoided, and your own determination. If you see something valuable, it is completely worth it to go to a safe zone, put items in your box, and then run out and grab it. And here's where the moments of safety can hurt gameplay, because knowing nothing is coming for you means that you should get every item you see and just backtrack to the safe zone when needed, because why the fuck not? There's no penalty for doing so. And this way the game becomes easier because you have more items than ammo, so why would you leave anything behind? So on normal at least, inventory isn't something the player should even worry about. Realistically, item management isn't either, since you can kill every Molten you see and then replenish your ammo while exploring. Unless you can't hit shit, then that's on you. There are several tastes that you can find in your journey, and these are helpful as guides to those who may feel lost and contain little stories that tell more about the world. And these give hints, example being the first one that shows a lever near the fireplace which opens a hidden passage, and another giving the solution to a puzzle room Lucas puts you in. What's great is both of those you can figure out on your own. You can notice the lever while searching around the house, and maybe your fucking psychic can know the puzzle solution already. But I like this feature. I can't tell if this is the case, but since we are in Ethan's head literally, and since we get knowledge he does too, technically there's a link between us and the character, because knowledge we gain will become knowledge he uses. But that's a dumb and far-reaching argument. Regardless, I think these tapes are good teaching tools for players on their first run because it teaches them and informs them what to look out for and can be skipped on repeated playthroughs when you know the solutions to them. I like this feature. If it's added in Resident Evil 8, then I hope it gets expanded in some way. And now I think it's about time to speak more in depth about the 3 phases of gameplay. First up, combat. Like I said, combat is very precision based and defensive. The reason I like it is because they have you be vulnerable without forcing you to control like a fucking tank. And missing the shot is the result of panicking or rushing more than the lack of control of your character. If you have played The Last of Us, you will probably feel a similarity, as both have the camera move slow and deliberate while aiming, requiring more patience on the player's side, and for survival horror that system is pretty good. You have a knife as a backup if you ever run out of ammo, but it's so weak and takes up so many hits to kill anything that I never found it to be a viable option. Hipfire is also an option, just not a good one, as you are more likely to miss shots when you do so. You can do a quick 180 turn that is useful for running the fuck away. The Molten are the main things you'll be facing. They are not that visually interesting but fit in with the swampy southern visuals but look boring and there isn't much variety. Basically there are 2 types, the standing one and the crawling one. The standing one is slow and the crawling one is fast, and that's it for enemy variety. Both are defeated by headshots. They have easy to read telegraphs which makes avoiding their attacks possible. The issue with the combat outside of enemy variety is that it can clash with the survival horror aspects. Enemies don't respond, so it's possible to clear out an area and explore freely, and doing so will almost always result in a net gain, and these Molten aren't terrifying at all. But I still think the combat is overall the strongest part, because once you're good at it, it has this rhythm of blocking and pulling off headshots, and after some time with the game, I got so much better at pulling off quick headshots when at the beginning I was as accurate as Octodad firing a minigun. Since there's not that many enemies, a big vomiting fucker gets introduced later, but that's it. Combat gets tedious after fighting the same Molten because they're like a puzzle that you've already solved and it's forcing you to repeatedly solve it again and again. A solution I could think of is have like 4 or so unique enemies in each area that represents the different bakers. The game does this already with Jack and Marguerite, because Jack is where the Molten are first shown and Mermaid has insects everywhere, which gives not only a unique visual distinction but a gameplay one, as the insects have swarms that fly around and have bases that need to be taken out. And then Lucas, the unoriginal bitch, just has Molten, and the last few hours are just endless combat encounters against the Molten with nothing new showing up. I feel like all stages from Jack to Mrs. Sprite to Lucas to the end should all have unique enemies so that they stand out more and feel more unique. Maybe that's too much to ask for, but I feel like if this game wanted to go from good to great, that would be needed. But right now it just feels like filler the devs added to break up the more interesting moments against the bakers, but didn't really give them enough of a presence on their own to make them memorable. What are more memorable are the boss fights. This is where things get weird. It's strange that a survival horror game has boss fights to begin with. Every one of these fights are in closed off arenas that are quite small, so you're trapped here with the boss. The first one is against Mia, and it's questionable if this is one fight or a string of fights. But the big fight is in the attic, and this is the first real test. If you can beat this fight, then you should be able to beat the game, and this fight just sucks. If you run out of ammo at any point, the best method is to run around the arena and bitch slap her with the axe. And on Madhouse, that is what I had to do, because this fight wasted 30 minutes of my time because I just kept dying, and she has so much health that even while getting headshots, I didn't have enough ammo to kill her. And this fight is the best example that I could show that the fights are against bullet sponges. Also, this is where a story conflict occurs, since Ethan is so goddamn skilled that he could reload a pistol with only one hand and fire it with accuracy. It's hard to see him as a weak or normal person because of this, but as I said, the game gets weird. The next fight is with Jack in the garage. And this is not even a real fight, more like an interactive cutscene. You just need to get into the car and smack into Jack, and not only does this not look that great, it's just boring as well. It's fun on the first go, but doing it repeatedly is just boring because what's asked of you isn't that difficult. They changed things up on Madhouse by changing the location of the car key, but that's it. The next fight is against Jack again, and this is where shit gets really silly, but overall up to this point it's pretty funny if you think about it. You start off running away from a redneck with a shovel, and you see him regenerate after being blown up and set on fire, and then you get to have a good old down south chainsaw battle. This is some fucking strange shit. Jack is very dangerous and can kill you quickly, but most of his attacks can be blocked. But this fight isn't so bad. The arena is very small, but you have these bags that you could smack into him to stun him quickly. Mrs. Baker is up next, and yes, I have given up on saying her name. She has the best lead up to her fight by far, and is unique in the way she fights. She will mostly avoid you and try to give birth to insects, gross, but it's just another fight outside of that, and it takes quite a lot to take her out. The grenade launcher and flamethrower are needed. At least they were for me. This fight doesn't have much to it, honestly. It's just a game of find her, damage her, and then find her again. But it's still enjoyable. You then fight Jack again for a third and final time. And this one has a mechanic where you must destroy the eyes to cause damage. This fight marks the moment where the game drops in quality dramatically, but I'll speak about that later. There isn't much to any of these fights, honestly. They're just quick moments of excitement and challenge to break up the pace, and these fights are not one after the other. There's typically a bit of time between them. There's one more fight against the grandma, but it's not time for that yet. Exploring the house is interesting, but there isn't much to it. The puzzles are just having the right inventory items, such as the first one where you need the bull statue to interact with the door. The shadow puzzles are more interesting. You have these strange objects and you must move them around in such a way that it lines up with the outline on the painting, and I like these, but I think they don't tap into the full potential of what they could have been. Maybe have multiple light sources and have the puzzle be combining them into a shape or something. I think these moments of downtime could have had more involved puzzles to solve. That's not all that exploring has. There are a lot of hidden items and ammo along with antique coins which allow for upgrades to be bought. Psychostimulants allow for all items to be highlighted. And the coins are used for buying steroids which give a health boost or stabilizers which increase reload speed. There's also a magnum to purchase with antique coins. There are treasure maps and these have two issues. One is when you get one it's easy to tell where it's located, so it can't really be considered a treasure hunt. The second issue is that these items don't spawn until you get the treasure map, which is just cheap. The player should be rewarded for noticing something even if they don't have the clue. You can find many documents and pictures that give more info on the Bakers and the overall story, and I found them to be entertaining to read and find. There are a few things that the player can notice and be rewarded with, such as a hidden area to use the toy axe, along with an office area with these paintings. Things like the broken shotgun are so simple I think most players will figure it out, so there should be more moments that reward player perception. There's something I haven't mentioned yet, and that is that the Molten don't follow you through doors, so if one pops up on you, just shut the door, problem solved. Now for the last phase, stealth. Stealth is very annoying and the weakest part of gameplay. There is no depth to it, and you have very limited options for avoiding the Bakers. This phase is just about waiting. Since the hallways of the house are very narrow and there isn't many places to hide, except behind chest-high objects. Other games would have more options for staying outside, like hiding in bookshelves or underneath tables or just something. But no, just hide behind something and just wait, just keep fucking waiting, and the penalty for failing is either die or just run to a safe house and have them lose sight of you and then fucking wait all over again. And since this is first person, you have a limited view, so the best way to tell where they are is through audio cues. And there really isn't much options other than that. There are no distraction mechanics, very limited movement, and the phase is just nothing but boredom. I can't even speak more about it because there's nothing to speak about. It's just waiting endlessly. I'm thankful you don't have to do it all that much because it's fucking terrible. The AI is fucking retarded too. I'm going to take a quick detour and just speak about the DLC for a second. The DLC for this game isn't that great to be honest and is overpriced. I will only discuss the Not Hero and End of Zoe DLCs. Both are combat focused with some new additions. Now Hero features Chris Redfield as he hunts down Lucas. Chris has a powerful pistol, shotgun, and multiple types of grenades. There are also a new enemy type that takes special ammunition to kill. There's a new stun mechanic where after you stun an enemy you can run up and punch them for an easy kill. The design is confusing, it looks open but it's actually very linear. There's a set path that you have to go through even though there are 3 doorways that you can walk through. Lucas is the last fight and he's pretty tough. The last phase has the player needing to refill their oxygen levels. The HUD has been changed, and it looks pretty nice in my opinion. They needed to change Chris to make him feel different than Ethan to control. Yeah, he has a stun punch, but I mean have him move faster, have more special moves that show that Chris is actually a trained soldier and prepared for anything that comes his way and not some average Joe. End of Zoe is a first person brawler. No joke, you just punch everything and it's awesome. You play as Joe Baker, one fucking buff grandpa, and attempt to rescue Zoe. You have your fists and spears if you want a long distance weapon, and because of his combat style being so different, it makes for a distinct style to what has come before. Punching everything is very satisfying. You fight a swamp monster that turns out to be Jack, which makes no fucking sense because he should be dead at this point in the story. We cured him. He spoke to us in a dream state, and he seemed fine. How the fuck is he here? Whatever, he's here, just accept it. You can notice the way the swamp monster moves is the exact same way that Jack does. The first fight desperately needs a WWE announcer commentating the whole thing. The only new things in terms of general enemies are Crocs, which kill you in one hit, and Molten with two sword arms. You fight Jack again at the end in the Baker house, and this fight sucks because he gave you an enhancement to your abilities with the power gloves but forced you to just spam it for damage. They should have had two gloves and allowed for holding one of the triggers in combat to charge up a massive attack. I know I missed a lot of details in those DLCs, but I don't want to spend too much time on them. I will say I find it strange that these DLCs are about the same in length and quality, but one is free and one is paid for. Not Hero is free and the Zoe is paid for, just in case you were wondering. Back to the main game now. Madhouse difficulty is a mode I just don't think is for me. It's something I find more interesting to think about than to play. Let me explain some things first. You unlock this mode after beating the game and it changes a few things outside of increasing enemy damage. For one, the limited save system is back from older Resident Evil titles. You collect cassette tapes and use one to save your progress. They increase the amount of antique coins and upgrades that you could purchase with them. Some enemy locations have been altered as well. Jack also stalks you at different points and there are very limited autosaves. All of this sounds great to me on paper, but while playing it I found it to be very tedious and annoying. I will say I haven't finished this mode, but I still have things I want to say. For one, the save system means that if you need to go somewhere like right now, you must either waste a limited item at a save area or lose your progress. But this can be easily fixed by just having a temporary save when you quit, but it is immediately deleted when you return to the game. Two is that I find repeating long stretches of content over and over again to be really boring, especially if it's one of the times I must avoid Jack. And the Mia fight is just terrible. I constantly ran out of ammo and had to do hit and run tactics with the axe, and when you die the game just needs to hurry the fuck up and not waste my time. Just look at these death scenes repeatedly. Just let me restart and don't waste my time on this. I am not going to say that no one should play this mode, but at least understand that it may not be for you, as it was not for me. And that's completely fine because it's meant to be an ultimate test for those who want it, and must be earned by beating the game. I may go back to it at some point, but right now I just don't enjoy the mode at all. But I will praise the fact that the game would have the highest difficulty set and change more than just enemy damage. And now the moment that I've all been waiting for, the end game Shillapalooza. Like I've said too many times already, the end game is where everything just falls apart and it starts with the fucking cure being made. You make the cure and of course, it can only make 2 fucking vials of cure and you know for a fact that one of them is going to get destroyed in some stupid way. And that's exactly what happens. Zoe tells you to use the cure on Jack, so you do so. And oh no, 2 girls, 1 cure. And it falls onto you to decide who you want to give it to. The cure, I'm talking about the cure, don't think of anything else. And this isn't an actual choice, pick me or the game will punish you. So why give a fucking choice in the first place? There's an issue with this choice, and that is the player's experience with these characters versus Ethan's experience with these characters. Let's recap our experience with Mia, shall we? She cuts off our fucking hand, is the reason we are in this mess, looks as though she's going fucking insane, has done nothing but attack us and get captured, and this bitch is the one you want us to save Capcom. She does redeem herself after this, but we can only judge off of what we have seen so far. She does not seem like someone I want to spend my time with at all. But for Ethan, this isn't even a choice. Your wife was missing for 3 years and you get her back no matter the cost. Fuck Zoe, then go fuck your wife and give her the cure. You can argue that since Zoe told you to use a syringe on Jack, you can say, well, you use your own cure up, bitch. That sucks to be you. There's no reason that I feel like Ethan would abandon Mia. There is also a very good reason as to why the player may want to save Zoe instead. She has been the only guiding force for you, reattaches the arm Mia cut off, and is the only person in this story that doesn't attack you. Mia, Jack, Mama Beats, Lucas, and even the grandma all attack you. But I guess since Mia is Ethan's wife, and she has her own qualities the player may like, she gets to be saved and they have a happy ending. After that decision, it gets worse. You leave the Baker house and head towards the crashed ship. You take control of Mia and get some answers on who she is and what events led up to the start of the story. And this is all good from a story perspective, but gameplay wise things get really repetitive and you're still fighting the same fucking Molten you've been fighting this entire time, but in a far less interesting location. This is just a personal preference, but the ship is not visually interesting and is laid out in a very boring and linear manner. And the game gives you 2 new weapons, a fucking submachine gun and sticky bombs, a fucking lot of sticky bombs. I was never in danger of running out of ammo before this, but I was always at least low on powerful ammo like shotgun shells and grenades, but now the game's like fuck all that, go nuts. This is the moment they needed to add more difficult enemies to really test your abilities. They give you increased firepower but against enemies that went down just fine without it. But to give some positivity, there's a scene with Jack that is my favorite of the game.
Then... Hey, shh, I know. I'm not gonna hurt you.
I can't pinpoint what exactly it is. The way Jack speaks is so different than the way he did up to this point, and Zoe is there but is distant with their father, probably because of everything that has happened over the last 3 years. And I just really like this short scene. But Jack lies. Lucas is confirmed as a killer way before the events of this game. You get control of Ethan again after the shipwreck, and get all the weapons that Mia has, and go through the most linear, restrictive, fucking boring area of the game. Mine is just a straight line gauntlet of the same fucking Molten you've been fighting for hours. It just feels like padding. You need something new to break up the pace. Have some puzzles or new enemies, just end the fucking tedium please. When I said the combat couldn't carry the game on its own, this is my evidence. The combat lacks depth. It's the combination of the combat, stealth, and exploration that has the gameplay become more than the sum of its parts, as none of these can carry the game on its own. The game loses this and only relies on combat with nothing to break up the pace. And the survival and horror aspect are both fucked up in this section. The survival gets fucked up because they just dump all these items and ammo, so fuck resource management. And it's just Molten who aren't scary, and if they were, they won't be after killing a fucking million of them. I'm thankful it's just the final few hours, but it's disappointing that they couldn't nail the final few hours. And it has a fucking info dump at the end. It realizes, oh shit, there are still questions, let's just answer them all at once. I learned that the grandma is the source of everything that's been going on. I am not fucking joking. I fucking wish I was joking. But no, the creepy grandma is actually Evelyn, and she projects herself as a child for reasons I don't fucking know anymore. You fight her, kill her, endgame, that's it. The fight isn't all that interesting. She has a huge hitbox, there's no challenge, just everything deflates. But after all that, I consider Resident Evil 7 worth playing. And after that long rant of negatives, that may be hard to believe. The Baker house and its inhabitants have been one of the most memorable places and people I've encountered in the game in a long time. And I hope that they learn from this and create the best horror game ever made, because I truly believe that they are capable of it. That's all for me. Thank you for watching, goodbye.